Well, let's start with the word accountability. When do we even care about accountability? It's only when the other person doesn't perform as we expect or want him to perform. Now we don't get the results we wanted. Now it's time to hold the person accountable. Well, what does it mean to hold somebody accountable? Well, we talk a lot about that, but there's only one bottom line word that you have to take into consideration when you talk about accountability, and that's consequences. There has to be consequences. Without consequences, there's no accountability. Abu Ghraib. We were very fortunate in having our Secretary of Defense step right up and say, the buck stops with me. But then the next week he gets the Medal of Freedom, and it's not clear that there were any consequences. Okay, why is it so difficult for people to even want to stand accountable? Because in corporate America and in our society, when we think of consequences, all we come up with is punishment. Consequence means negative results for the actor. So people don't want to be held accountable, because who wants to stand up and say, okay, punish me? Well, that's a disorientation of the society. And I ask you, the viewer right now, what can you come up with in the way of consequences beside punishment, beside negative outcomes? Most people can't get there real quickly. Learning. Did the person whose malperformance or inconsideration or you name it, who produced the negative results or the disappointing results, did the person learn from that experience so that it's likely to minimize the chances she would ever do it again? Did they learn from that experience bigger things so that, in a sense, having them perform that task again is even a benefit to the company? Because they learn their lessons, and they learn deeper lessons. Well, that's part of it. The other part is the bosses. What's the boss's job? The boss's job is to choose people, coach them, guide them, give oversight, essentially stage for them to be successful. That's what a boss is supposed to do. And so that when there's a disappointing performance, who should be accountable? Well, it's not just the individual, it's the boss. But we live in an organization culture where it's highly likely and even probable that subordinates get fired and the bosses get promoted. Okay, so if we're talking about a disappointing performance, we have to think about both sides of the issue. The other side of the issue is, did the boss also learn the lesson that causes that individual to give a better quality of coaching and oversight, and in fact weld him or herself as part of the performance team, actually, because the social expectation is they're going to be part of that team. So that's an open-ended question. The way corporate America operates now is that's not required. The lessons up the line, not just down the line. Holding people accountable for what their job was. Their job and role of the boss is the stage for the subordinate to be successful. So now we come up with the issue of two-sided accountability. In my book, Don't Kill the Bosses, I take that issue up under the question, how is it possible that we live in an era where we talk about empowerment and teamwork and participatory decision-making, and we've got a situation at a massive scale of people telling the bosses what they think the boss would like to hear. And the bosses who are bullshitting their bosses, walking around under the misconception that they heard it straight, that they got it, the straight message. No, we've got to change the accountability. We've got to make it possible, we've got more probable that people will that people will say it straight to the boss, and the bosses can hear it straight and not feel like they now have to censor or punish the individual who only told him or her the truth as they know it. And that's where two-sided accountability comes in. Bosses should be held accountable for staging for the subordinate's success, and subordinates should be held accountable for producing the results. So we talk about teamwork in modern organizations, but usually it's a team where the boss says, I want all you guys reporting to me to work together cooperatively. And maybe that's possible. And maybe the extraordinary political situation is such that we don't have to worry about whether that's the internal competition. But whether or not that's possible is open to many variables. But what needs to happen, what always needs to work, is the two-person team, with the boss with each of his or her direct reports. That team should work. That should be a team. And two-sided accountability speaks to that issue and has many ramifications for the running of the modern organization. In my book, of course, I talk about those applications, and today I'm conducting several fieldwork experiments in revising the way companies work to include more consciously the two-sidedness of accountability.